For years, I believed family was everything. I believed loyalty was unbreakable, especially between sisters. I was raised to work hard, stay honest, and always put family first. I lived my life by those rules without questioning them, even when it required sacrifice. I truly believed blood meant protection, not betrayal. Looking back now, I realize how deeply that belief shaped every decision I made, and how vulnerable it left me when the people I trusted most chose to break it. Growing up, I was the responsible one in the family. I studied seriously, worked part-time, helped at home, and planned carefully for my future. I didn't expect shortcuts or special treatment. I believed success came from patience and consistency. My younger sister, Lauren Walker, was nothing like me. She was naturally charming, confident, and beautiful in a way that drew people toward her without effort. She knew how to talk, how to smile, and how to make people feel seen. Opportunities seemed to find her easily, while I worked quietly in the background. I never saw Lauren as competition. She was my sister, and I loved her. I believed we complemented each other. I thought we were a team. But there was always something subtle beneath the surface, something I chose not to name. Lauren often wanted what I had, even when she already had enough of her own. I noticed it, but I ignored it. I told myself jealousy between siblings was normal and harmless. I believed trust meant not questioning intentions, and that belief would later cost me everything. When I met Ethan Brooks, my life finally felt stable. We met at a business networking event in Chicago, and what started as a short conversation turned into hours of talking. Ethan was calm, focused, and disciplined. He spoke about building his real estate business from nothing, about long days, smart risks, and careful planning. What impressed me wasn't his wealth, but his work ethic and clarity about the future. Being with him felt safe in a way I hadn't experienced before. Our relationship grew naturally. Ethan was consistent and clear about his intentions. He didn't play games or avoid serious conversations. He talked about marriage early on and meant it. As his career grew, our life became more comfortable. We traveled, attended events, and spent long evenings talking about goals and dreams. When he proposed, it felt like the natural next step. I said yes without hesitation, believing I was stepping into a life built on honesty and partnership. Lauren congratulated me with a wide smile and hugged me tightly. She told me she was happy for me and promised her support. I believed her completely. After the engagement, she became more involved in my life. At first, it felt harmless. She offered to help with wedding planning, suggested venues, and volunteered to manage details. Ethan welcomed her presence, seeing it as a sign of a close and supportive family. I didn't question any of it. Lauren started coming over more often, sometimes before I got home. She would sit with Ethan and talk while waiting for me, or ride with him if we were all going somewhere. She made herself useful, pleasant, and easy to be around. I noticed small things that made me uncomfortable. She laughed a little too hard at Ethan's jokes and asked him personal questions about his work and stress. But I pushed those feelings aside. I trusted them both and didn't want to seem insecure. Over time, the signs became harder to ignore. Conversations would end when I entered the room. Text messages felt unnecessary. Lauren began making subtle comments about how serious I was, how hard I worked, and how confident she felt about herself. If I questioned her, she laughed and said I was too sensitive. She compared herself to me more often, sometimes about confidence, sometimes about how people reacted to her. I told myself it was just her personality. Lauren also found more reasons to be alone with Ethan. She suggested quick errands, asked for help with small tasks, or requested advice she already understood. Each moment looked innocent on its own, but together they created a pattern. My instincts warned me something was wrong, but I ignored them. I believed trust meant staying quiet and calm. I didn't want doubt to ruin my relationship. What I didn't know was what was happening when I wasn't there. Lauren spoke to Ethan about me carefully. She suggested I was distant, too focused on work, and didn't fully understand his pressure. She presented herself as the listener, the one who understood him without effort. She told me one version of events and told Ethan another. Small misunderstandings slowly grew into doubts, and I was the last person to realize it. The day everything ended began like any other. There was no warning and no argument. I came home earlier than expected, hoping to surprise Ethan. What I walked into froze me in place. They were together, and there was no confusion about what I was seeing. The silence in that room was heavy. Lauren didn't look shocked or ashamed. She looked annoyed, as if I had interrupted something she believed she deserved. That hurt more than anything else. Ethan tried to explain himself. His words were weak and scattered. He spoke about confusion and changing feelings, but none of it mattered. When I asked Lauren how long it had been going on, she didn't answer directly. She said she and Ethan understood each other in ways I didn't. She spoke like I was the outsider in my own life. I looked at Ethan, hoping for regret, but he didn't defend me. In that moment, I knew I had already lost him. The engagement ended that same day. There was no closure and no respect, only silence. Lauren didn't reach out afterward. She didn't explain or check on me. She simply stepped into the life that had been meant for me. In one day, I lost the man I planned to marry and the sister I trusted most. That night, alone and exhausted, I felt like I had disappeared. The woman I thought I was no longer existed, and I knew nothing in my life would ever be the same again. After the engagement ended, the silence around me felt louder than any argument ever could. I stayed inside my apartment for days, barely answering calls or messages. My body moved through routines, but my mind was stuck replaying the same moments over and over again. I questioned everything, my choices, my trust, my judgment. I couldn't understand how the two people closest to me could erase me so easily from their lives. It didn't take long for the story to spread. Lauren and Ethan didn't hide their relationship. Within weeks, they were seen together in public, comfortable and confident. People began talking, not with concern for me, but with curiosity. Whispers followed me everywhere. I could feel conversations stop when I entered a room. I became a subject, not a person. Lauren controlled the narrative early. She told family members and friends that my relationship with Ethan had been failing for a long time. She said I was distant, too focused on work, and emotionally unavailable. She painted herself as someone who stepped in only after everything was already broken. Ethan stayed quiet in public, and his silence was taken as confirmation. People assumed there had been problems I never spoke about. No one asked me what really happened. When I tried to explain, the conversations became uncomfortable. People changed the subject or offered shallow advice about forgiveness and moving on. Some relatives told me I should let it go for the sake of family peace. They didn't understand that I wasn't holding on to anger. I was shattered. Family gatherings became unbearable. Lauren attended confidently, holding Ethan's hand, calm and composed. She avoided direct interaction with me, but made sure others saw how controlled and graceful she appeared. I felt like an unwanted reminder of something people wanted to forget. Slowly, invitations stopped coming. Phone calls went unanswered. Messages were left unread. I realized people had chosen sides, and it wasn't mine. I began blaming myself. I wondered if I really had been too serious, too distant, too focused on work. My confidence disappeared. I no longer recognized the person I saw in the mirror. Every familiar place felt uncomfortable. I felt exposed everywhere I went, like my pain was visible even when I stayed silent. Eventually, staying became unbearable. I packed my things quietly and left town without announcing it. I didn't say goodbye to most people. I told myself distance wasn't running away, it was survival. I needed space where no one knew my story or judged me based on lies. Leaving felt like failure, but staying felt like drowning. The first year away was the hardest. The silence was heavy, but necessary. I cut contact with almost everyone, not out of anger, but because I needed peace to heal. I focused on building routines that kept me grounded. Work became my anchor. It gave my days structure and reminded me that I was still capable of creating something solid on my own. Slowly, I began to rebuild. I took on more responsibility at work and learned new skills. I stopped measuring my life against anyone else's timeline. There was no rush anymore. I learned that strength doesn't always look confident or loud. Sometimes it looks like showing up every day, even when no one is watching. Emotionally, I changed. I accepted that betrayal had altered me, but it hadn't destroyed me. I became more observant, more careful about who I trusted, and more aware of how manipulation works. I stopped ignoring my instincts. I learned that silence doesn't always protect peace. It can protect lies. I didn't think about revenge. I didn't imagine confrontations or apologies. What I wanted was clarity. I believed truth didn't need my help. Lies collapse on their own when time removes the mask. I trusted that patience would reveal what force never could. Because of my work, I occasionally came across information connected to Ethan's business world. I wasn't looking for it, but I didn't avoid it either. I noticed patterns that didn't make sense, contracts that seemed rushed, partnerships that looked impressive on the surface, but felt unstable underneath. I kept my distance and observed quietly. I learned how wealth can hide problems for a long time, how success can distract people from asking the right questions. I didn't share my observations with anyone. I didn't need to. I trusted time more than confrontation. As the years passed, my life became steady. I moved into a comfortable place, built professional respect, and found independence. The anger I once carried softened into understanding. I no longer felt like a victim of my past. I felt grounded. From the outside, Lauren's life looked perfect. She had the marriage, the money, and the status people admired. Photos showed smiles and luxury. People spoke about her as if she had won. But what most didn't see was how quickly that image began to crack. Her marriage wasn't built on trust. Control slowly replaced affection. Security was no longer guaranteed. It was something she had to protect every day. While all of this was happening, I remained distant and unseen. I wasn't part of their world anymore, and that distance gave me clarity. I understood how fragile appearances could be and how power shifts when truth is ignored. Without realizing it, I was becoming prepared for something I didn't yet know was coming. Over time, cracks in Ethan's carefully constructed world began to show. Deals that once seemed flawless started drawing quiet concern from partners. Legal matters became more complicated, and decisions that had previously earned him praise now carried hidden risks. Lauren noticed things were off, but she didn't know how deep the problems ran. She relied on the wealth and lifestyle she had fought to secure, fearing what would happen if it disappeared. The confidence she once carried so effortlessly began to feel heavy. Every smile, every conversation, every carefully chosen word required calculation. Security was no longer automatic. It had to be maintained constantly. Meanwhile, I remained detached. I wasn't involved in their lives, and they didn't consider me relevant. This distance gave me clarity I could never have had before. I observed quietly, piecing together patterns from information that seemed small or insignificant to anyone else. I didn't need to interfere. I understood that the truth often works on its own timeline. It doesn't need to be forced or announced. It simply arrives when conditions are right, and everyone sees it in its full impact. During these years, I completely transformed. The person I had been, the one who trusted too easily, who forgave too quickly, no longer existed. I became strong, measured, and patient. My routines, my career, my life outside their chaos gave me stability. I stopped looking for validation in others. I stopped trying to justify my worth to people who had already chosen to believe lies. I learned that independence is more powerful than any revenge. Quiet strength became my shield. I became someone who could stand alone, calm and confident, knowing that life has a way of revealing the truth without my interference. Then came the news that would bring everything full circle. Ethan Brooks had died suddenly. There was no illness, no long goodbye, just a shock that rippled through everyone who knew him. Messages flooded my phone, some formal condolences, some surprised inquiries. I hadn't spoken his name in years. Yet hearing of his death stirred an unexpected calm in me. It wasn't anger or regret. It was a quiet sense of closure. Death has a way of ending things permanently, of forcing truths into stillness. And I was ready to witness the final chapter without being drawn into chaos. The funeral was tense, full of careful glances and polite conversation. Familiar faces appeared, older and changed. Lauren stood at the front, dressed in black, composed and seemingly in control. To the world, she was the grieving widow who had lost everything. She accepted condolences with calm nods, her words measured and rehearsed. She didn't notice me at first, blending quietly into the background, observing every move. I wasn't there to confront her. I wasn't there to accuse or demand attention. I carried something far stronger than emotion. I carried truth. Speeches praised Ethan's ambition and accomplishments, painting a picture of a man admired and respected. There was no mention of risk, no hint of flaws or mistakes. Lauren remained calm throughout, confident in the world's perception of her. In her mind, she had everything. What she didn't realize was that the foundation of that confidence was about to shift. She believed she was untouchable. She didn't know that decisions made years ago had quietly protected what mattered most, ensuring that reality would eventually catch up. After the service, family members and close associates gathered in a private room for legal matters. The air was quiet but charged with expectation. Lauren sat upright, hands folded, ready to hear confirmation of her assumed control. A lawyer stepped forward, explaining documents, trusts, and holdings that had been carefully prepared before Ethan's death. The lawyer outlined instructions and restrictions, showing how assets were legally allocated. Slowly, the room grew quieter. Confusion crept onto Lauren's face. Names were mentioned, but not assigned as she expected. The truth landed quietly but firmly. Lauren was not the primary beneficiary. She was not even in the position she thought she had earned. Legal documents confirmed that control and ownership were not the same. She questioned, insisted there had to be a mistake, but the lawyer repeated the facts calmly. Everything was valid, witnessed, and binding. Silence settled over the room, heavy and final. Family members exchanged glances, unsure how to respond. Some avoided eye contact. Others looked at Lauren differently, finally seeing her in a light they had ignored for years. I stayed quiet, unseen, and unnoticed. I didn't need to speak. The truth did all the work on its own. Lauren tried to regain composure, but the certainty she had walked in with had evaporated. The life she thought she had built through manipulation and betrayal no longer offered protection. There was no dramatic confrontation, no loud accusations. What happened was simpler and more powerful. She lost the illusion that betrayal has no consequences. In that moment, I felt no joy, no triumph, no need to celebrate. What I felt was relief. The burden I had carried for years, the pain, the heartbreak, the injustice, lifted quietly. Time had done what anger or confrontation could not. Lies collapsed on their own. The balance I had been waiting for, without seeking it, had finally arrived. Lauren withdrew after that day. Without control, without certainty, she struggled. The confidence and poise she once wore like armor had cracked. She could no longer manipulate perceptions or maintain her perfect image. People who had believed her version of events began to question everything. The silence that followed was not filled with apologies, but with recognition. For once, reality spoke louder than deception. I returned to my life quietly, unchanged in routine but lighter in spirit. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to assert power. What happened wasn't a victory over someone else. It was a return to balance. Betrayal had once made me feel small and replaceable. Time showed me it had done the opposite. It had forced me to grow, to listen to myself, and to build a life independent of anyone else's choices. I learned that strength isn't loud, and justice doesn't always arrive dramatically. Holding on to resentment would have meant remaining tied to a past that no longer existed. Letting go allowed me to move forward fully, free from fear and regret. Family relationships shifted quietly over time. Some connections were repaired in small, subtle ways. Others remained distant, and I accepted it. Peace sometimes means allowing distance to remain. I finally understood that what I had lost wasn't stolen. It had been removed to make space for something stronger. Truth and patience had healed me. Integrity had endured where lies had failed. And the most powerful response to betrayal, I realized, is not confrontation or revenge. It is patience, composure, and letting the truth speak for itself. Over the years, I had become someone unshakable, not because I sought it, but because life demanded it. And in that calm, quiet strength, I found something no betrayal could ever take away: myself. For years after that shocking day, I finally felt the calm I had been waiting for. Life had returned to a steady rhythm, one that was built entirely by my choices and effort. I no longer defined myself by what others had done to me or by the betrayal I had endured. The pain that once felt endless had softened into understanding. I had learned that the deepest wounds often leave the strongest scars, and those scars can become a source of power, not weakness. I began to see life with a new clarity. People's actions and intentions mattered, but I no longer allowed them to control my happiness. Trust became something I gave carefully, rather than blindly. I became more observant, more cautious, and more resilient. I discovered that personal strength doesn't mean pushing everyone away. It means knowing who deserves your trust and who doesn't. And when you let go of people who cannot honor your boundaries, you create space for peace, stability, and growth. Family dynamics slowly shifted as well. Some relatives reached out quietly, finally seeing the truth through their own eyes. Others stayed distant, and I accepted that. Not every broken relationship can or should be fixed. I learned that peace often comes from allowing distance to exist without resentment. Closure doesn't always require confrontation. Sometimes, it comes from stepping back, living your life, and letting reality speak for itself. Looking back, I realized that what I lost years ago wasn't taken from me. It was removed to make room for something better. Betrayal had forced me to grow, to listen to my instincts, and to become self-reliant. I discovered that revenge is rarely satisfying. True satisfaction comes from living fully, free from fear and resentment, while letting time and truth handle the rest. Patience became my ally, and clarity became my guide. I learned that integrity doesn't always win instantly, but it lasts. Lies may thrive for a while, but eventually, reality catches up. And sometimes, the most powerful response to betrayal is quiet and unseen. It doesn't need dramatics or confrontation. It doesn't need to be witnessed. It simply exists in the way you rebuild your life, honor your values, and refuse to let others' choices define your worth. Now, I live a life I can be proud of, one where trust is earned, boundaries are respected, and peace is valued above all else. I don't dwell on the past because it no longer controls me. I carry the lessons with me: patience, discernment, resilience, and self-respect. Those lessons are far more powerful than any moment of revenge or public vindication could ever be. To anyone who has felt betrayed, hurt, or replaced, I want you to know this: your life is yours. You cannot control others, but you can control how you respond. Strength is quiet. Justice is often subtle. And truth has a way of revealing itself, whether you intervene or not. Betrayal may have once made me feel small, but it taught me to grow taller than I ever imagined. I learned that moving forward with calm, integrity, and patience is far more powerful than trying to force closure or confrontation. Life has a way of balancing itself, even when we cannot see it. And in that balance, I finally found freedom, peace, and the unshakable certainty that I am enough, without anyone else's approval. The journey wasn't easy, and the scars remain, but they are a reminder of what I survived, what I learned, and how far I have come. And that, more than anything, is worth celebrating.